Hello, welcome back. I'm Isabella Felzer Kim, education journalist, and we're sitting here talking with Ms. Felzer, a high school English teacher. Good afternoon, Ms. Felzer.
Oh, good afternoon. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Very good.
Glad you could join us. In this challenging time for public education, what do you see as the main challenge in educating our youth?
Oh, well, there are many challenges in educating our youth. The main thing is, I believe that they need to read better and deeper, to get more out of the text, to dig deeper, and then not only to read better and deeper, but to be able to discuss what they read and then to write about it coherently and analytically with great thought.
Okay, you have a book with you you'd like to share. Addresses a strategy to help students read more critically. So let's begin with a quick overview of Literature Circles by Harvey Daniels.
Yes, this is an amazing book. I'll just show it to the audience here. It's about literature circles and written by Harvey Daniels, the forerunner actually in the use of lit circles in high schools, junior highs, grammar schools, and in the home, and with adults as well. Harvey Daniels started experimenting with what he calls lit circles or literature circles or LCs somewhere in the 1980s in the Chicago area. He was a primary school teacher in Chicago, and he began to try this idea out with his students and with some of his colleagues in the particular school that he was working.
What have lit circles evolved into today, and why does Daniels believe this has happened?
Well, lit circles have come a long way. There's what we call the New Wave, which is a group of teachers who have expanded the lit circles recently in the last maybe 10 or 15 years. Before that, we had the originators, such as Daniels and many of his colleagues in Chicago, who started this literary reading technique. They've actually taken on a life of their own. Not only in schools, but in the adult world as well. Book clubs, for example, something that he gives credit to Oprah for, with her book club on television, and people are they're meeting all over the country and having book clubs in cafes, basements, high school classrooms, teachers' rooms, libraries, and so forth. So it's a very popular thing right now. What's happened in schools also has been wonderful. Principals and teachers have agreed that in some schools that everybody reads the same book during the same period of time, and that discussion goes onward in all the classrooms with all the teachers, with all the students. So it gives kids a chance to truly interact with the text with other people other than just their small groups or their classrooms. Mm. So it's really a wonderful phenomenon.
Yeah, so how does Daniels describe lit circles, and what does he see as their function in schools?
Well, there are many variations of lit circles, all the way from kindergarten up and through college. He talks about, and many of his colleagues are quoted in here, about literature circles. First of all, I think the most important thing is that students choose their own books. They go to the library, or the teacher gives sets of books out for kids to choose from, and they pick the one that they want to read. Any groups from, they say 3 to 5 or 4 is the ideal number of students in a book circle. And in the beginning groups, they recommend that you give out roles to each student, so each student has a role to participate in the group with. For example, some of the groups need the roles and some of them don't. But they say in this book that it's better that you have the role sheets to begin with, which I'll get into in a minute. The discussion goes smoothly if the roles are given out and each student understands his or her role in the group, and then everyone is responsible for coming to class that day prepared for the discussion. And the longest term goal that they've established is to make children become lifelong readers and lovers of reading.
So how do these lit circles improve the reading?
Well, first of all, at the beginning of the book, Daniels talks about how standardized test scores have gone up in schools where lit circles have been in existence for some time. It meets the Common Core standards that are now coming out and being used in schools. Also, he makes a statement that if you let kids choose their own books for the reading circle assignments, of course not their own textbooks, but their own reading books, that 99% of the time they're going to choose books that are at their own level and books that they really enjoy reading. And so once they pick it up and they get hooked in it, then they are going to read the whole book, which is our goal, to get kids to read. So in a nutshell, lit circles, according to Daniels, build kids' comprehension, their thinking, and engagement with literature, as well as achievement as readers. Plus, in lit circles, children discuss the book in groups at least twice a week. So there's a discussion element as well. This discussion adds depth to their understanding, as all students are expected to participate. So it's a win-win all the way around.
How does the book suggest that you engage shy or unprepared students?
Well, that's always a problem in classrooms, especially when you're working with students who are not motivated naturally and are not good readers. But everyone can participate in this. Well, first of all, when some of the teachers in here are writing about what they do in their classrooms, I could really relate, because I have kids from very low level to very high level in my classrooms, like many of us do. But her recommendation is to present groups of books from a lower end level, reading level, to the higher end level. Smaller books, larger books, more complex books, simple, easier grammar in the books, easier vocabulary, all the way up to the most difficult. Because we have a wide range of students in our classroom, so we need to meet everybody's needs and where they are in order to get them engaged in reading. One of the most common motivators is to assign each student a task, like I said before, or a role to perform in the group discussion to get them to talk.
So what are these roles that you're talking about, and how do they work?
Well, there are a variety of roles. Like I said, from the simplest, there are, say, 4 or 5 roles, and you can expand that to maybe 6 or 7 roles, depending on how many students are in the groups, or if you want to double them up or whatever. But Daniels and his colleagues give all sorts of techniques to get kids started to talk about the book. And so the roles, I think, work well for beginning groups. Some of the teachers say after a while you don't need them because the students know how to talk about books at this point. But I would certainly use them at the very beginning, because that's the learning point. I really respect Barbara Dresser. She is one of the teachers that is often quoted in here, and her techniques and so forth are taught. For her, the basic roles include the question maker, the passage picker, word wizard, and the artful artist. I think you can figure out what those roles might consist of. Someone who's asking questions, someone who picks a passage that they found profound and something they could relate to, someone who found words in the text that they could teach to the rest of the class members that they could discuss, and then an artist, someone to make an illustration of the meaning of that chapter or those pages in the book for him or her and share it with the group. In fact, in the book, on pages 107 to 139, there are pages of roles that teachers can photocopy and hand out to the students to prepare them, including roles for nonfiction reads and roles in Spanish for our ELs and our ESL students.
So as a high school teacher, which of the chapters did you find most helpful?
Oh, well, it's really hard to answer that because this is an amazing book. It's loaded with not only information, but tactics, suggestions, procedures, pitfalls. It's just a wonderful to-do book, how-to-do book. I can't really narrow it down to one chapter because everything is extremely important. But I would say, if I had to, chapter 10 is very enlightening for me as a high school teacher, because it applies most to my students. And in this section, there are two authors that talk about their experiences with lit circles in their own classrooms. Nancy Stanke and Margaret Forst, who are amazing, seem to be amazing teachers to me. They are what Daniels calls the second wave of lit circle teachers. They've done amazing things with lit circles. They include how to evaluate student participation, and their meticulous planning will help everyone who wants to start literature circles in their classroom. In fact, you know, if you look at this book, I have post-it notes everywhere in this book because there's so much good stuff that I need to help me through my adventure with reading circles. Also, there's chapter 5 I would point out, and it describes how one teacher trained her students. They don't like the word train in the book, but educated her students to do lit circles and for them to work, as a whole couple of weeks of training that the teacher did before they actually went into the lit circles. Step-by-step training, and it's very, very helpful.
Cool. So how can you use lit circles across the curriculum?
Daniels writes a chapter about that across the curriculum, and his idea is that we don't use a math textbook, for example, or a physics textbook, or a chemistry textbook for reading circles, because that's a lot of factual information, and to sit around and read that would be really boring. But he suggests that teachers, social science teachers, math teachers, and so forth, they bring in articles from the outside and that relate to the chapter or whatever the students are reading at that time, and the students read those articles and then get into the reading circles and discuss those articles that are relevant to what they're learning in math or science or psychology or whatever it is that week or for 2 weeks or whatever. So it does work across the curriculum.
Okay, and has there been favorable responses to literature circles? How do students respond?
Oh, well, according to this book and people I've talked to that have done literature circles, that it's amazing. Students naturally adapt to it because most kids, there are a couple of shy ones out there, but most kids love to talk to other people. And so when they get together in a group, the problem usually is not getting them to talk, it's just keeping them focused on the book. And also another challenge is getting them to come prepared to class, because a lot of them won't read it, or they won't have their roll sheets and they won't know what they're supposed to do. So, but that, once they get that and they understand that they can do it, that it's possible for them to be part of the group, and they want to become part of the group because these are their colleagues, their peers, they want to do it. And so there's that sort of little bit of pressure there, and most of them enjoy it. From what I read here, everybody seems to just fall into it, and if it's a book they love or even like, they will want to talk about it. And it's been very successful throughout the years, and I would highly recommend it. In fact, I'm getting ready to embark on my lit circles next semester. I'm really excited about it.
Cool. Yeah, so do you want to talk a little bit more about your experience with lit circles? Well,
I actually did start lit circles, but I didn't know what I was doing. I had heard about them. We had sort of experimented in my graduate classes, you guys, in circle work, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I just said, okay, they need their own books. So we all went to the library and everybody picked a book. Of course, I gave suggestions for Chicano Lit, which is the class that I'm mostly doing this with. And they came back with amazing books that they liked. One kid could not put his book down. I saw him in the hallway early in the morning at 7:30, and he was standing there reading his book. And so and later on he told me, I just couldn't put it down. I just couldn't put it down. So they come excited about what they've been reading. And so I had them pick their own book, and they, over a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, we would take time in class to read, and they would do open mind journaling and summarizing and responding and that sort of thing to get them into the book, to get them engaged in the book and responding to it. And I didn't have discussion groups at all because every kid had a different book. There were a couple kids that had the same book, so I let them talk together and read together. But I didn't do what Daniel's outlines here because I didn't know really how to do that. Plus, I didn't have the sets of books. I don't have 4 or 5 books of one title. I've been working on that for the last semester or so, and I'm finally getting to that point. But I did that, and at the end is what really worked. Is at the end we got into 3 big circles, and the students presented their books to one another, and they created posters, podcasts, and videos, and PowerPoints to advertise their books. It was really exciting, and they all were totally into it except maybe 2 or 3 that hardly ever came to class. So it was a great success in my way of doing it, but now I'm really excited to do it this way because I feel this is much more thorough. And like I said, I finally have gathered some of the books together so we can start doing that.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah. So in summary, would you have some recommendations for teachers inexperienced in literature circles for junior high and high school?
Well, first of all, I recommend that everybody tries this because you will be pleasantly surprised if you haven't done this already. There's a fear that students will be running around the room and not talking about the book, and I mean, you know, that may happen at first, but once they get into the books, they'll be hooked. And they do engage with one another about a book that they care about. The rules and the parameters are necessary to set up before you start the lit circles. And once they know, they will be responsible, and if they are not, their group members will make them responsible because there'll be some kind of a peer pressure there. They will learn, and they will read more deeply, and they will think analytically and critically. I think it's the best thing. These lit circles is one of the best things to happen to junior high and high school. I've never had it in my school when I was growing up. I would have loved this, but I guess, you know, I graduated in the 70s, so there was no way that it was happening in the educational realm at that time. But the techniques in this book are extremely helpful. It'll keep you on track. And there's also a computer, there's a website you can go to. Even if you don't own the book, you can go to this website here. And it's information about lit circles. And the other thing is, I would recommend that you check this video out from the library. I believe it's at CSUN. I know it's at Channel Islands here. And it's a video that shows teachers in lit circles and with students in classrooms. It's very helpful. And so
it's called Looking into Literature Circles?
Oh, looking into literature circles. And it's actually footage of teachers mentioned in the book who are showing you how to do it. So there's a lot here. And then in the book there are markings where if you're reading about something, you go to the video and look at it to help you through that situation. But yes, I would recommend this for every teacher in high school, junior high, even grammar school, because it's an amazing activity for the kids to engage in reading. And then of course there's writing also, which is another step in the students writing about what they've read. So it's a total program of reading and writing. So I definitely recommend it, and I hope that you look into this book. It's wonderful.
All right, great. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming here today and interviewing me.